Hey everyone, thank you for joining episode 23 of The Green Life. Today's subject is really important, also a little bit controversial. We're going to discuss autoimmune disease. Now, a lot of you might have heard that autoimmune disease is not reversible, it's something that you just have to live with. But I have a guest here, Dr. Benjamin Benulis, who is actually a proof that you can reverse autoimmune. He's been through it. Before becoming a doctor of chiropractic medicine, Dr. Ben was a mechanical engineer and he was working in microchipping and in a very different environment than what it's now. And for the past few years, he's been really helping people to reverse chronic and autoimmune conditions as he did for himself with one massive thing: nutrition and lifestyle. So his book, Create Health, which is what we're going to talk about today, is going to really delve into the things that you can do to improve your condition and even reverse autoimmune, which is what Dr. Ben did himself. The reason why he became a doctor is because he was just not helped by the medical system. Doctors couldn't tell him what he had, couldn't figure it out, and couldn't give him a solution. And he was someone that was really reliant on that industry. So this is a really interesting journey to get into. So without further ado, let's talk to Dr. Ben. Welcome. Hi, Ben. How are you today? Thank you for joining The Green Life.
Excellent. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Okay, first thing, congratulations on your new book, Create Health. I have it here. Great read, very digestible, very easy to understand. And for people that don't know you, and before you're going to talk about a little bit about the book, what is your story? How did you actually even create the book? Because the book is all about reversing autoimmune disease, which I believe you were fighting. So I love your story. I love to know how you got into natural health, into medicine actually, and then how you got to the book.
Sure. Yeah. So, I guess I prefer the term natural health over medicine. Medicine is not something I want to be involved with, especially after, I had a really unsuccessful run-in with it. That was about 12 years ago. I basically started coming down with health problems in my late 20s. And at the time, I wasn't a doctor. I really had very little knowledge about any of this stuff. But I came down with essentially chronic fatigue, chronic muscle pain, chronic digestive issues, really bad eczema, really bad brain fog. And it got to the point where it was like really hard to function at work and have a social life. And it just really started really interfering with my life, where I was, almost incapacitated by it. And so it took it getting pretty bad for me to finally go to a doctor and say, okay, what's wrong with me? Fix me. Let's figure this out. And that whole experience was very frustrating, because it was like they couldn't figure out what was wrong. And they would pass me over to a bunch of different doctors. Okay, you got skin problems, we'll send you to the dermatologist. You got digestive problems, we'll send you to the gastroenterologist. And so one doctor became 4 or 5, and then each one of them is like, yeah, I really can't figure out what's wrong with you. Oh, ran your blood work. Oh, everything looks normal. Oh, you're fine. And so just started getting the runaround with no one could seem to figure out what was wrong. No one seemed to really care or want to help me. And it was like, as long as their lab tests showed that oh, everything's normal, they kind of just went, oh, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do for you. And so after about 6 months of this, I got pretty fed up with it, and just kind of assumed at the time that I had some stuff going on that was just I was the zebra that modern medicine couldn't figure out. And I found out later on, it's no, actually a lot of people were going through the same thing or similar things. But at the time I was like, okay, I guess they can't help me. I guess I got to figure it out on my own. And so that's when I just started researching. And, I had a science background. I did engineering, and I think you mentioned our mutual friend, Stacy. We were in this biotech program together in high school. So I had some understanding of science and biology and things like that. And so I just started researching and just trying to figure it out on my own. And this was 2010, 2011. There isn't the amount of information that there is now. There was still a good amount of information, but it took a while and some digging and some experimenting with different things. And And so I would read information that would say like, oh, if you just, eat healthier, more fruits and vegetables, a lot of these problems improve or go away. And I thought, not doing that. Like there's got to be some cure out there. There's gonna be some fix, And the more I just like researched and experimented and tried different supplements and different like herbs from the jungle and all these, like nothing really worked until I really started doing the work of like, okay, I'm gonna change what I put into my body. And that's really where it began. And it was kind of like something I didn't want to do, but I kind of had exhausted all other options and I was really desperate. Like I was like really struggling at my job to the point where my boss was like, hey, if you don't step it up, you're going to lose your job. I was struggling in my relationships that like I never wanted to hang out and I was always tired and didn't feel good. And I just, I really had a fire under me that was like, get this fixed or like everything you have just kind of goes away. And so, when I made the dietary changes, I was really, once I kind of found something that really worked, I was surprised at how well it worked, how fast it worked, and how much better I felt than just normal. Like it was like, I didn't just have no more chronic fatigue. I had energy going through the roof. I was like, the chronic pain went away, the digestion improved dramatically, the skin cleared up, all these things improved. But then on top of that, I just felt way better than I'd had in like years or decades or my whole life. And so I got really excited about this and I started telling everybody I knew about like, oh, you got to eat more fruits and vegetables and like, check me out. I've got, like a whole thing of watermelon here. Right.
I love it.
And so most people didn't want to hear it enough. And most people didn't really understand how bad I was before. But it really just got me passionate about it. And about that time I hit 30, I was just like, I want to do something different with my life. I want to help people. And I'd going through this and learning about it, I had met enough people that were going through similar things that I realized there was a lot of people suffering out there that modern medicine couldn't help and that natural health was actually a better solution for. And I had been sort of groomed my whole life to believe anybody who does natural health is just because they can't, they couldn't cut it as a medical doctor or whatever. So they go do something else because academically they weren't as smart as, the real doctors. But I had been doing 6 months of the real doctors and getting no real answers. So my paradigm had really shifted around like, okay, what works and what doesn't. And I've always been a fan of doing what works, even if it's weird. And so basically after, doing this for years and helping lots of people and answering the same questions and that kind of thing, I just thought, if I just put a book together, I don't have to answer the same questions. I can just basically say, hey, read what's in this and just apply it and amazing things will happen. And also just kind of as a primer, like if I could go back in time and just save myself a bunch of hassle when I was suffering, just be like, hey, just go back, just do what's in this book. I know the guy on the cover, he looks a little familiar. He's got good ideas. Just apply it, man. See what happens. That's a story of my health journey in the book for sure. Yeah.
And what was your career before you became a doctor? A natural doctor.
I worked as an engineer in the semiconductor and microchip industry.
Okay, so totally tech. Okay, fantastic. Wow, what a shift, what a change. I can relate though, because I also, when I turned 30, my health wasn't great and totally self-induced by eating disorders and, a lot of stuff going on. And when I changed my diet, magic happened. And then I fell off the wagon 5 years ago because of stress. And I cannot tell you how quickly I deteriorated. And then only last year I started putting myself back together. And it's so crazy how some of us don't really know how to feel, how we should feel. So we think that feeling, mediocre is good enough until we feel better. I feel great. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I lived feeling like crap my whole life. I think this is why probably your book really resonated. I mean, I only got it last week from the delivery service because we live in northern Portugal and I don't know, the postal office here is very bizarre, but I managed to go through it so quickly. And one of the things that really fascinated me is that you don't only focus about food, though I'd like to talk about that first, but you also tackle other subjects like environmental factors, which people don't think about, but are really, really important. So let's start from the food. What kind of diets were you eating before you actually turned into a healthy eater?
I was eating pretty much standard American diet: pizza, burritos, Mountain Dew, beer. If I had it at home, if it couldn't be microwaved, or I wasn't really interested, you know.
Yeah.
So that's what I ate, and I'd always been thin my whole life. I never had a weight problem, so I just kind of figured, well, I must be healthy because I'm not fat. You know?
Yeah, funny, hey? We put weight in parallel with health, and sometimes it's really wrong. And so, what did your diet change to then? How did you shift? What is your diet now?
Sure. So, I mean, in the beginning, I just really started incorporating lots more fruits and vegetables with no real intention to do anything or have any label. It was just like, okay, this is what's working for me. I'm going to keep doing this. And eventually it got to the point where the fruits and the vegetables pretty much crowded everything else out. And I was what you would term a raw vegan for about 3 years. And in that time, like, experienced a lot of healing, but just eventually decided, okay, well, what would happen if I included like some cooked plant foods back in my diet? And I started experimenting with that, didn't feel a difference, was able to kind of retain all the healing that I had done and the level of health that I had. And so that's what I do now. I'd say I eat, anywhere from 70 to 90%, raw fruits and vegetables. And then I include some cooked whole plant foods like, steamed vegetables, baked potatoes, squash, like gluten-free grains, things like that. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm doing the same, more or less. I also find that being a high raw is really helpful. I actually, you don't live in, you used to live in Boston, right? You're originally from Boston?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, where do you live now?
I live in Phoenix, Arizona now.
Perfect. So it's the perfect weather for raw. That's what I wanted to check because I did see your Instagram, and I think you're having as hot weather as we're having here. And I've noticed one thing. I love raw food and I love gigantic salads, and I can really do it so easily actually, but in winter it is a struggle. In winter I need to have a little bit of something warming, otherwise I really struggle. But there are places in the world where you can totally just do raw and be completely fine. Now I know that there are some school of thoughts that think if you some nutrients you can't really get from just raw food, they need heat and they need to be kind of cooked. Is that what you found in your research as well, that it's better to balance out than rather than doing full raw?
I don't think there's any nutrients you can't get. There's no nutrients that are created by cooking. I think one of the ones that's talked about is lycopene. It's found in red things like watermelon is actually full of lycopene, right? And they've done experiments that show if you cook it, it becomes more bioavailable than if you don't cook it. But in that process of cooking, you end up destroying some of the lycopene. So it ends up being pretty much a wash. And also, like, lycopene is not something that we can understand even what a deficiency is, right? No one's ever said, well, I got that lycopene deficiency because I wasn't cooking my tomatoes, But there are definitely some nutrients that are not found in plant foods traditionally, which we can talk about for sure, like vitamin B12 and vitamin D, if you want to talk about that.
I love that. Yes, please. Go ahead.
So vitamin B12 is a very controversial one, because it's not found in plant foods, but it's also not found in animal foods. It's actually made by bacteria. Okay. And these bacteria grow mainly in two places: in the soil and in our large intestine, like basically where our poop's formed. So you can't really get it from there. You can get it from, this, if you're eating lots of things that are pulled out of the ground, there's some dirt on them, you can get it that way. But generally speaking, we supplement, right? And even if you're eating animals, you're supplementing because they're injecting, the cattle with them. So that's something that, generally speaking, in today's modern world where we're not eating dirt and excrement, that you gotta get from a supplement, because they can basically grow bacteria in a lab, and those bacteria can produce the B12, and then they can just harvest it that way. So yay, modern biomedical technology in that respect. And the other one is vitamin D, which is really a misnomer to call it a vitamin. I think when it was first isolated, it was thought to be a vitamin, but then they found that it was a hormone that actually animals and humans or a type of animal make when their skin is exposed to sunlight. And so, the best way to get that is going to be to get natural sunlight. Obviously, if you live in an area where you can't always get that, you can supplement. But it's an important vitamin. It affects like bone function, immune function, mood, many things. So it's definitely something that no matter what diet you're eating, you want to get your levels checked and make sure that you're not deficient. And if you are, supplement for sure. Yeah.
Did you find that you were deficient when you started your journey, when you started checking your blood because you weren't feeling well?
Yeah. My vitamin D was like under 20, which is like really low. My vitamin B12 was like under 200. So it was really bad.
And you were eating animal products at the time. How funny, huh?
Yeah. But I was also, not sleeping, eat tons of alcohol, tons of caffeine, just tons of bad food, right? So my body was just kind of naturally depleted from all the stress I put it under.
Yeah, of course. Wow, that's fantastic how you turned it around. And vitamin D actually, I think, got a little bit of publicity during the last 2 years and a half from the natural world more than anybody else, which is really something that I can't get my head around. We know how important vitamin D is for our immune system, and then we face a health crisis, if you want, globally, and none of the people that are supposed to care for our health and talking publicly have once mentioned, guys, you need vitamin D. Only the natural doctors and the people that were really standing up what was going on against what was going on said it, and then they got censored for it. I mean, it is insane. So yeah, I know you were one of the people that were definitely saying we're doing something wrong here. How did you find that your business for a minute here, for your business changed in the last 2 years? Did you find more people came to you to find help because they've just realized that they weren't getting it from allopathic medicine alone?
Yeah, I mean, a lot's changed in the past 2 years for sure. And I was one of the first people that I knew speaking up about it. It was very, very scary because I really felt like I was putting my head, sticking my neck out. And I faced a lot of negativity and pushback and all those things. And, but I just kind of knew in my heart, there was too much on the line, that I knew what the truth was. And I knew kind of what the deception was going on. And I knew that there had to be other people who agreed with me, who were too scared to speak up. So I'm glad that I did, because I think I got a lot of those people to speak up. But yeah, I did see a big uptake. I mean, I think my Instagram grew about 10x what it was, and so, and yeah, I had a lot of people reaching out to me. And I think just that, like, as the conventional method of what you need to do to quote unquote be healthy just got more and more absurd. Like, oh, one mask is not enough. You got to wear 2 masks, and you got to stay away from everybody. And you got to sterilize everything. And then you got to shoot up 1 shot. No, maybe 2, maybe 3, well, actually 4, and it's still going on. And just sort of like, but then you got to wear it, when you walk into the restaurant, when you sit down, you can take it off. And just like, the mainstream message got just so absurd that people are like, wow, like, I actually think that maybe these guys don't know what they're talking about. And so that's when it kind of gave people like me leverage, because it was like I was speaking out against the absurdity, and they're like, oh, maybe this guy actually has a clue. And then they go and they apply what I teach, and they're like, wow, this guy actually was right all along, So it's been an overall like blessing that I've been able to like reach a lot more people and get this message of health that I've been trying to get out for 10 years out more. So, it's like, yes, has been a lot of bad things have happened. Yeah, but it's sort of like you can't have the light without the dark, and things getting as bad as they did caused a lot of people to rethink things and reevaluate things and reconsider things. And for that, I'm grateful.
Brilliant. Yeah, well said. Okay, let's move on to the other things in your book, which are really interesting and which people do not think about, and environmental factors. And I think this ties in well in what you just said, because one of the things that was happening whilst everybody was at home is that somehow these very necessary 5G towers were popping up everywhere. And all of a sudden, everybody started kind of getting outside their homes, and here the trees don't look quite the same. There is something in it, and then nobody could talk about it. And another thing that got censored is when people started talking about 5G and what does it do? Can we ask questions? And people really couldn't, because everyone that talked about it, just like the vitamin D or any other natural approach, was censored. But you actually do speak about these factors. So for people that actually haven't looked into it because, well, they couldn't or haven't been bothered, can you just explain what these 5G towers do and how they affect our body?
Sure. So 5G stands for fifth generation, okay, of wireless technology. And so it's different than like the 5G Wi-Fi. That's more just 5 gigahertz as a frequency. 5G is like a band of frequencies or a family of frequencies that's better at sending data, more data faster than previous generations. So if you think about like 1G was like the giant brick cell phones that people had in the 1990s, very few people had them. And then 2G came along, and that enabled things like the BlackBerry, that you could send like data over it. And then when 3G came along, that was text messages, SMS. We could send text messages wirelessly. Okay. And so that was all well and good till about 2007, 2008, when the iPhone came out. All right. And then people were just sending massive amounts of data, video, audio, MP3s, MP4s over this wireless network. And the telecom companies went, wow, like we don't have enough infrastructure to support this. We need to build more towers. That's when 4G came along. And 4G was basically what enabled the iPhone and the Android to send a lot of data. And so as time has marched on, our appetite for data has increased. Where now it's like we want to do all these crazy things where we want to like live stream video wirelessly, all these things that are very, very data intensive. Trying to do them wirelessly requires more and more power, okay? More and more radiation to come off of our devices, off of the towers, off of intermediary points. And so that's caused them to need a more powerful network. And so here's the thing, that like as we go up in how much data we use wirelessly, not, we can still send it all through wires very safely, but when we're talking wirelessly, you need to give off more and more power, which is essentially more and more radiation. And so now what they've devised is a way for 5G so that like everything can be interconnected, right? That like not just your phone or your computer or that, but like everything in your home, right? That like, okay, you have a lamp in the background, right? Well, now you have a detector on your window that says, okay, the sun's coming in, we can turn off the lamp, right? And, like you order my book off Amazon. Well, there's a tracker and you can track and I get live updates of like where the book actually is, right? Because we have all these devices interconnected. And it sounds like a great idea. And like I said, I used to work in the microchip industry. We were talking about what's called the Internet of Things, where we have all these devices interconnected and be able to send signals to each other, and everything could talk, and you'd have a smart this and a smart toaster and a smart washing machine and a smart diaper that could tell when your baby crapped its diaper, and it would send an SMS to your phone. And it's a great technology. It's a great idea. But the problem is it just requires shooting a lot of radiation back and forth. And we're human beings that are sensitive to that. We're caught up in the midst of it, and it becomes harmful to our health. And so what things get really bad with 5G is the frequency band that it uses, right? It uses a different set of electromagnetic frequencies called microwaves. All right. Now, most people think, oh, microwave, I have one in my house. It's no big deal. But the radiation that it gives off is actually harmful to humans. Okay. Now, if they had all the towers and they were all shooting X-rays, and the 5G towers are shooting X-rays everywhere, people would be like, X-rays, I don't want to get radiation from that. Well, the truth is that microwaves are just as dangerous. And so now what they've said is like, okay, we need to send so much data that the towers aren't just going to be like, 250 feet up in the air, 2 miles away, like zapping through the sky. We want everything interconnected. So these towers are going to be like 30 feet in the air, 10 meters in the air, and they're going to be like every 300 feet apart, every 100 meters apart. So it's like zap, 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 zap. Everywhere you go, you're getting zapped, right? And so the amount of radiation that you're being exposed to because the towers are so much lower to the ground and giving off different frequencies is like literally millions of times more. Okay. So that it becomes much more dangerous to human health. And so that's what we're speaking about. And I can tell, as someone who worked in the telecom industry, in the microchip industry, it's not like the drug industry where you have to do human safety testing. Like, we didn't do that. There was no human safety test. The FCC, which is the government body in the United States that, oversees telecommunications, does not require any human safety testing. So it's just being put out there and no one's really checking to see if it's harmful for humans. But when we look up the data on microwave radiation, and I feel like I've gone on and on here giving a long explanation, but when we look at that data, we see that microwaves are very harmful to human health. In fact, we have about 20,000 published studies showing that like microwaves are harmful to humans. So here's the good news, is that we don't need to yes, 5G microwave is dangerous. Okay, can we still have all the whole internet and do all the things we want to do? Yeah, we just got to be more intelligent about it. We got to use a lot more wired technology. Let people use Wi-Fi in their homes and stuff like that if they want. But really, to beam the internet down on everybody from everywhere is basically beaming harmful radiation on everybody from everywhere. And it's really not a good solution in terms of human health. So we need to rethink our approach, is basically what I'm saying. So in the book, we talk about just how you can mitigate your exposure to radiation by doing things like turning your Wi-Fi off when you're not using it. Just in the same way, you don't leave your faucet on when you're not using it. Just it's a waste. So that's kind of the gist of the 5G thing and how what's called EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, can negatively affect your health.
And you mentioned people saying, well, I have a microwave at home. So how do microwaves differ?
They don't. I mean, I guess the radiation is contained within a device to some degree, and it's not like a constant thing, right? Like, it's only giving off the radiation when you're using it, versus if you have a 5G tower in your front yard, and yes, they are building them there, that's 24/7 radiation hitting you, right? At a much higher intensity.
Yeah. When was this? About 7-8 years ago, I was looking into microwaves because we had one and then I got rid of it. But I got in touch with a professor from the Carolina Institute at the University of Stockholm, and he was studying the effect of microwaves on human health. And I still have his email, and he told me, sadly, in academia, when you find something the industry doesn't like, you get defunded very quickly. So he was actually slowing down his research because it wouldn't get the funding. But he said that when we use a microwave in our homes, we should be about 20 meters from the microwave device. So that just brings up a lot of questions, and people don't know. We got rid of it, and actually, I really don't miss it. I haven't used the microwave in 7-8 years now. So we don't miss it at all. It's funny how I thought, oh gosh, we're gonna not be able to do this and this and this, but it's perfectly fine. So I think we need to probably that's one thing that we can do at home straight away, is being mindful about how we prepare our food and how we even use this microwave. Is it necessary? Probably not. Is it convenient? Sure, but not everything that is convenient has turned out to be very good for our health. So we have to be intelligent about it. So yeah. What about for people that live in in building, like in blocks, in building blocks, like in cities like Boston, London, New York, and sometimes you can be mindful and you can switch off your Wi-Fi, but then your neighbors can keep it on and they don't care, and if you tell them, they probably throw something at you. So what do you do then? How do you protect yourself?
Yeah, it's much more difficult. It's much more difficult in that scenario. I mean, you just do the best that you can. I mean, yeah, it's you're never going to escape it completely on modern Earth unless you live completely away from civilization. But you just do the best you can to mitigate your exposure. Yeah.
Have you looked into devices that trap EMF or protect you from EMF. Like they have clothing they sell, and the cages that you can put around your router, buttons that go on your phone. They have a lot of things. I haven't looked into many things because we use shungite, which it's a crystal or a stone that seems to be really good. We have a meter, and in our house, our exposure is really non-existent, but we also live around a lot of nature, and we don't have, thankfully, 5G towers. Let's hope it stays that way. But I imagine, that people that are not in the situation would need something. Have you looked into these devices that they're selling? Are they good?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there for sure, and I think most of it is actually pretty suspicious. Especially like, you think you're going to get a sticker on your phone and you're protected. If that phone can still send and receive messages, send and receive calls, the sticker hasn't done anything, right? Mm. And you get something like a Faraday wallet, which can hermetically seal your phone. It will keep, from giving off any radiation, but at the same time, you won't be able to make calls or texts on the phone. So if the device works around whatever is supposed to be protecting you from it, it doesn't really work. The protection doesn't really work because the device shouldn't be able to send and receive a signal. So I think there are things like, paint that has, things like silver in it, which can deflect EMFs. Obviously they make netting that's made out of silver, which can also deflect EMF. You can cover your bed in that. They do make clothing that's got silver in it that can be. I haven't tested that as much, but I know that the things like the netting I've tested. Okay, we have the silver netting, and we take a phone, we turn it on, we put it inside the netting, and then we get a meter. And the meter can't detect it, right? So I know that works. The clothing I haven't really been able to do that experiment with. So. There's definitely stuff that works and stuff that doesn't work. If people want to pick a company, there's a company called Safe Living Technologies that I've found that their stuff is pretty legit. I think it's slt.co if they're interested in that kind of thing. But
yeah, we can put it in the show notes.
The guy who's at the farmer's market selling necklaces, I honestly don't think it works.
Probably not. So I actually should have asked you this at the beginning, but I was so keen to know about your experience. The buzzword that has been going around, and actually you mentioned a lot of people don't feel well and they have this, but autoimmune disease. So if people don't know what autoimmune is, and they might say, oh, well, I have a thyroid issue, or, I have fibromyalgia, or, whatever they call it. But there is an umbrella under which so many of these ailments can be under, which is autoimmune. And can you just explain what an autoimmune disease is?
Sure. So by definition, auto meaning self, immune being the system that is supposed to fight disease, that system starts attacking you. Now, whether that's actually going on or not in these disease conditions is controversial. So some people say, well, it's not actually what's going on, but it is kind of a label that medicine will use when they can't figure something out. They're just oh, it's autoimmune, right? It's basically means we don't know what's going on. But when we see the traditional autoimmune diseases, they have a Hashimoto's thyroid issue. Well, that's the immune system attacking the thyroid. They test positive for antibodies to their own thyroid. So they got rheumatoid arthritis, okay, different from grandma's osteoarthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is the immune system is actually attacking the joints. Here we can find the rheumatoid factor that shows that that's going on. So depending on what part of the body the immune system attacks, they give the disease a different name, but it's really all the same phenomenon. It's just happening in different locations. And the good news is that the root cause of that phenomenon, no matter where it's happening, can be addressed with diet and lifestyle. And that's what we talk about in the book.
So a lot of people have been told that autoimmune disease is not reversible, but clearly from your experience and the title of your book, it totally is. So can you just give me a list of things that people need to absolutely look at when they found out that they have that they have an autoimmune disease?
What do they need to look at in terms of evaluating their life or look at it for blood work? Well, they need to look at, how they're eating and how they're living. And, a lot of people will tell me, oh, but I eat healthy. And it's like, when we actually get into the conversation, it's like, they don't eat very healthy at all, but they eat what they think is healthy. And it's actually, I always thought, like, oh, I must eat healthy because I'm not overweight, right? And I would be the person who would like eat, when they pass around cookies at work, I would eat 2 cookies and people would be like, it's going to catch up with you. And I'd be like, no, it's not. I just got good genetics, so it's not going to catch up with me. As in, I didn't think I would get fat, but the irony is it caught up with me, just not kind of in the way that I expected in other ways. So that's really what they got to look at. And they got, they have to make changes. And, if they struggle to do that, they should be working with someone who can help them do that, who's versed in this stuff. So the book outlines it, what to do, but, if they think that, like, a lot of these people get transitioned from medicine to medicine to medicine, they get put on these immune suppressant drugs, right? Which, like, oh, your immune system is attacking your joints, so we'll just suppress your immune system, right? It seems like a good idea in theory, but the problem is you kind of need that immune system, right? Especially when there's a pandemic going around, kind of need it. And so it's like, it becomes whack-a-mole. It's like, we'll suppress your immune system, but then you'll get these other issues, and then we'll give you other drugs for that. And then pretty soon you're on 9 or 10 different drugs and you're not feeling any better. And you're like, when does this end? Right? So if you are on drugs, you got to look at, okay, what symptom is this drug suppressing and what root cause are we ignoring by just trying to suppress the symptoms? And the closer you can get to the root cause, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. It feels like sometimes a solution for a short-term outcome has got a very negative impact on the long-term effect. Like, it's impossible not to live with our immune system. This is how we even managed to get here, which is why I find it really funny when people freak out and run to get a shot that is still, well, it's not a vaccine and is also still experimental. And they're like, I need this for my immunity. I'm like, you have your immune system for your immunity, though, and you're not looking after it. And then when they have autoimmune disease, like shutting it down, it's crazy. It's so counterproductive. But I think, and I really, really think that doctors, for the most part, really want to help people. They just don't know how to do it because they haven't been taught. And from, I used to always think that medicine was about learning how to heal. But actually, I have so many friends who are doctors, and many of them studied medicine, finished their degree, they did their residencies, even went and worked in an hospital, and then they changed. And they're like, no, I'm going to have to really go and do integrative medicine, and I have to add naturopathy to this, and I have to do holistic healing because I'm not helping people. And they told me that all you learn really is what the disease is and what drug it is for the disease, not so much about how to actually heal somebody. And, at the beginning you say, I don't want to really be associated with medicine, but the way I look at medicine, real medicine, to me, medicine is healing. And the way that, that the world is doing medicine now, it's really disease management and drugs pushing. Which is really, really sad, because we created this paradigm where if you are questioning and if you're looking at solutions, you are criticized. But if you are only covering up the issue with a temporary patch, then you are told to be this fantastic doctor. And people just don't feel better. And today somebody reminded me of that. One of my clients, we did a session, and she's only done 1 month of practice with me, and she doesn't have heartburn anymore. And it's like, she literally, when she met me, she was like, I have to take this. I have to take these drugs for my acidity because I have a terrible heartburn. And I said, you have a heartburn because you don't actually produce enough acid, and you keep on taking these drugs, it's going to make it worse. So let's try this. And we tried just changing the diet. I didn't even put it on a protocol to help with the acidity. I just changed a couple of things, the usual, like, dairy and gluten. And we did also some IgG tests and see what she was actually sensitive to. Gone a month. you know? So look how easy it was. Instead of going to the doctor and keep on getting prescribed medicine to stop the acidity, which is crazy. And, in the same, I know a lot of people that have autoimmune disease and they just keep on taking drugs and then they're not well at all. And then, the flu season, as they call it, starts and they're the first ones down with the flu. And it's just really sad to watch. So your book is really helpful, and I think a lot of people can benefit from looking at it and reading and actually understanding how they are empowered to take choices and decisions in everyday's life and actually really become the healthiest version of themselves by not relying on a drug, but relying on choices that they make every day. So what was your favorite part to write into the book and why?
I mean, I'll tell you this. I don't like writing. I'm glad to have the books done. The writing was not a fun process for me. I'm much more like a speaker video guy than I am a writing. But I did write one portion that kind of explained the whole medical model of how drugs work by suppressing symptoms and what the side effects are. And I kind of explained how a bunch of different blood pressure drugs work. And I thought that was like, when I wrote that, I was like, wow, this is really good. I'm excited to put this in the book. I'm excited to share it. So that whole section was probably my favorite one to write because I got to basically tell jokes and at the same time explain a very important concept that people need to grasp. So it's probably my favorite part.
That's awesome. And you have a chapter about the mind and body connection. And again, something that in allopathic medicine is something that is missing. You go there, matter of fact, we do your blood work, we look at your blood work, well, nothing is wrong here, go along. But you mentioned that the mind is very powerful and there is a connection that we forget about. So can you talk a little bit about that part?
Sure. So, it's funny because doctors will say things like, well, it's all in your head. And then the next question is, okay, well, we've isolated the problem. What are you going to do about it? Right? Like, how do we fix that? Right. And then it's like, oh, well, that's basically a way of them saying like, you're crazy. And so I can't, and therefore I can't help you. It has nothing to do with my inabilities. There's just something wrong with you that I can't fix. But there is, the mind has power over the body. And if you're, you can eat the perfect diet of fruits and vegetables, right? And be a raw vegan and like enjoy all this great food. But if you're not exercising, if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not around positive things, if you're always stressed out and always negative, body's gonna have a really hard time healing. Okay. And so in the book, I just give practical tips of ways to leverage that and get into a positive state and release stress and not let the negativity of the world affect you as much, which we definitely see helps with healing, because obviously if you're in a more positive mind state, well, then it's actually easier to stick to healthy habits. So it all becomes one thing. It's like you can't really separate the mind from the body. They really are one continuous entity. Some people call it like a mind-body connection or a body-mind. And so you really have to, if you're going to really get progress in your health, you really have to work at all the aspects of it at one time, as best you can. Because if you just only focus on the physical and you don't take care of the mental and you drive yourself crazy trying to eat healthy, like you're going to have a really hard time making forward progress.
Yeah. And for people that are not feeling well, so exercise becomes really, really hard to do. What is your best suggestion so that they can start moving a little?
Sure. It would be to find something that they like to do. It doesn't have to be working out in the gym. That's probably not even the best thing for most people because they don't enjoy it. Obviously, we all know people that like love it and they're gym rats and they go all the time and they enjoy it. But, like if that's not you, it's going to be hard to train that into you, right? So you need to find activities that are fun. And if you're like really struggling, it might just be walking. Or if you're really overweight and that's hard on your body, it might just be riding a bike to get started, or maybe dance, or maybe swimming, or whatever it is. Pick an activity you enjoy and make it fun, and then you take care of motivation, right? So it's really like it's got to be fun, or it's going to be hard to be consistent at. So, and for some people, it's like they really don't even know, right? And then I would say, well, go back to what you enjoyed as a kid and just do that again, or do the adult version of that, whatever that was.
Yeah. I mean, I get a lot of clients who haven't moved for a while, that if they suffer with fatigue, and fatigue is probably the common denominator of all disease, and they, just walk in nature. And then you get two benefits of one. You also get that nice nurturing mind effect from being in the elements, which a lot of people forget to do. We are so used to having everything in our home, and everything is so sterilized, and we forget how beautiful it is to just be in nature. And of course, some of us are really lucky to have that around. Sometimes it's harder, but even in a city, you can find a park, and God forbid, like actually, if you just sit under a tree and ground with your feet on the floor, on the earth, on the grass, it is such a powerful impact on your body. It just reminds us that we really come from nature. We're not really separate. We should be much more mindful about that. Mindful connection again. So what is the future of your future, really, your bright future ahead? What do you have, any plans that are talks or lectures or online programs? What do we have here?
Sure. So I haven't announced it, but I'm going to be doing like an online webinar next month in July on like reversing autoimmune disease. So look out for that. I am working on a second book. And for now, I'm mainly I run a coaching program for people with autoimmune disease. So if that's something you're interested in, you can send me a message. Love to support people that way. But yeah, those are some of the things in the works.
So do you do online telemedicine? It's not just for people that live around you in near your practice, right?
Yeah, I have people all over the country and the world that I work with for sure doing health coaching.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, that's great. Well, thank you so much. I don't know if you have anything else that you want to share with us that we haven't touched on, but I think I covered everything in your book.
Yeah, sure. So the book's called Create Health, Reverse Autoimmune Disease Without Drugs That Are Side Effects. If you want to pick up a copy, obviously Amazon, but if you buy it on my website, which is createhealthbook.com, I throw in some extra bonuses that you won't get on Amazon, so you might want to check that out.
Oh, nice to know.
Yeah.
Damn it, I didn't know. I got it from Amazon. Well, book depository.
I'll send it to you if you want. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I will share everything in the show notes so people can get there. And I look forward to the webinar. That's going to be fun.
Okay. All right. Well, Chantel, thank you very much.
No, thank you, Ben. Have a great day.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Dr. Ben, and thank you everyone for staying on for this episode. I hope you learned a lot and got inspired to take matters into your hand when it comes to your health. If you have any struggles with autoimmune disease, whatever it is, get in touch with Dr. Ben. Get his book, Create Health, Reverse Autoimmune Disease Without Drugs and Their Side Effects, and get yourself on his mailing list because he has some awesome webinars and masterclasses coming up. So I would really get in touch with him and stay attuned if you want to learn more and if you want to heal. I really am happy that we had the time to discuss. It was a little short, but it was so informative, and I really couldn't be happier that we can bring this information out there to the public. They are being told by their doctors oftentimes that they cannot heal their bodies, which is crazy. So if you like this episode, please do give it a thumbs up, share it, give reviews, like us on the platforms you're listening to so that we can carry on growing, and I'll see you next time.